Hello and welcome to another video on real-time interview questions on QA profile. So this is the continuation video of the Selenium interview questions which we have discussed in the previous videos. So let's continue with our questions. So the next one is, what is the super interface of the Webdriver interface? So to explain this, let me go to my blog. So if you see this image here, have the Webdriver, which is the Selenium WebDriver interface, and right now we have discussed Chrome driver is a class and Firefox driver is the another class, and these all classes are implementing this WebDriver interface. And in middle we do have the other interface which is remote WebDriver interface. So this remote WebDriver also implements this WebDriver interface, and this WebDriver interface actually implements the search context interface. So this is how the format looks like. First we have the search context interface, and this is implemented by the WebDriver interface, and this WebDriver interface is implemented by remote WebDriver interface, and this remote WebDriver interface is implemented by this Chrome driver and the Firefox driver classes. The question we have is, what is the super interface of the WebDriver interface? So the answer would be search context is the super interface of this WebDriver interface. And if they ask you what is the super interface of the remote WebDriver interface, you can answer it easily by seeing this, which is the WebDriver interface. So remote WebDriver is implementing the WebDriver interface. So it is the super interface of the remote WebDriver interface. And when they ask you what are the classes that are implementing the WebDriver interface or remote WebDriver interface, you have to say it as Chrome driver and the Firefox driver. These are few of the classes which are implementing the WebDriver or the remote WebDriver interfaces. Let's move on to the next question. What are the different types of locators? So in Selenium, we have multiple locators to identify the web elements in our web application, and I have made a video explaining the different locator techniques we have in Selenium. So this is the video which explains all the different types of locator techniques we have in Selenium and how to use them. So I request you to go through this video to get the more detailed explanation of the different types of locators in Selenium. So to say in precise, we can answer it as the different types of locators in Selenium are by ID, by name, by xpath, by CSS selector, by tag name, by class name, and by link text, and by the partial link text. And if you want to know how to use these locator techniques, please go to the video which I have referred you previously to understand this. I'll also share the link of this video in the description so that you can refer to that link. The later one is, which locator is the best to use for identifying the web element? So we have seen these are all the different locator techniques we have in Selenium. So, but which one is the preferred one to use and why we have to use them? So, the answer is we always go by using the ID. So, by ID is the most preferred one to use. The reason is when we go to the DOM of the HTML, let's consider this is the web application which we want to test. So, here you can see all the HTML related tags of this application. So when you observe this dev tag here, we have the ID which is dev login image container. So let's copy this and check how many times this ID is repeated in the DOM. So you can see here it is repeated only once. And let's check the other ID as well. Have the dev login image ID. So when you see it here, it is also repeated only once. So that means in the HTML DOM, we always have ID as the unique value. So the other attributes like the class name and the value and the type, they all might be common, but the ID attribute will always be unique for a particular element in the HTML. So that is the reason ID is always preferred to use for identifying any of the element, because it will remove the risk of identifying the duplicate elements. But what if there is no ID for that particular element? What will be the order of using the locator? So the order then will be like ID, and next we will be using the name and then the CSS selector and then the xpath. So this is the order of using the locator techniques we have. The next one is, why is the CSS selector better than the xpath? So in the previous question we have seen the order is ID, then name, then CSS selector, and then the xpath. So why we have to prefer the CSS selector than the xpath? So the answer to this is like, xpath engines are different in each browser. So when you have written a xpath in particular browser, that might not work in the other browser. And especially for the IE browser, we doesn't have the native engine, and in that case, Selenium will inject its own xpath engine for compatibility. So that makes the xpath inconsistent, especially in the IE browser. So that is why xpath is not preferred to use in the IE, as it tends to make it complicated and hard to read. So that is the reason we say CSS selector is preferred over the xpath. The next one is, what is the syntax of the xpath and the CSS? So previously we have seen which is the better, but what is the standard format of writing the xpath and the CSS? So let's see that. We know we have the driver.findElement method to find out any of the web element, and here we are using the xpath technique. So we'll write it as y.xpath, and the syntax goes in this format of / tag followed by @attribute equals to value. So here the tag is any of the HTML tag. It can be dev tag, span tag, image tag, paragraph tag, or anything. So it can be any of the HTML tag, and here the attribute refers to the attribute of that particular element tag. So the attribute can be the class, value, type, ID. So it can be any. So this is the format of writing xpath for any of the web element. It will be / followed by tag and @attribute equals to value. And for the CSS selector, we'll write it as tag and in the square brackets attribute equals to value. It doesn't have these / and for the attribute. So this is the slight difference we have in writing the xpath and the CSS selector. So let's stop here for this video, and let's continue the remaining questions in the coming up videos. Thanks for watching the video. Hope you learned something new today. If you find this video helpful, please like and share it with your friends, and please do subscribe for more content like this.